Welcome back to the Sugar Freedom Kitchen, where I demonstrate my long-term sugar-free lifestyle. And that's important. This is a demonstration, not a recommendation. I'm sharing my experience. If you want to try a sugar-free or ketogenic diet, you should probably see your doctor or a registered dietitian first. We're coming off of American Thanksgiving, and I am sharing my results from the steak and egg diet and what it was like to come into Thanksgiving after steak and egg, do Thanksgiving, adding some foods back, and then coming back off of it afterwards. I have a history of being triggered by sugar, grains, and processed vegetable oils, so I always eliminate them. However, one of the things I do like to do on special occasions is I like to add back some foods, some very high quality foods, some substitutions. But the balance is I want to bring it in for a soft landing. So on Thanksgiving, I want to be able to eat turkey, and I did have sweet potatoes. I had sugar-free cranberry sauce, which I made myself, a little bit of green bean casserole that was made by my son's girlfriend, and then I made a chocolate mousse for my dessert that evening, but I was so full and satisfied that I did not want it, and so I ate it the next day. So let's talk a little bit more about what it was like to come into Thanksgiving on steak and egg. So I had done the steak and egg diet for 5 days coming into Thanksgiving, and I was feeling incredibly, I had good energy, great sleep, just feeling really, really good all over, very optimistic, good motivation. So really, really positive coming into Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving morning, I got up and I had a little bit later, I had my steak and egg breakfast and started doing the preparations for Thanksgiving. So I'm making all of the normal foods for my family, you know, getting the sweets, getting the rolls, all of these things, making these foods, making the stuffing. And the incredible thing about doing the steak and egg, being carnivore, being keto, going into it, absolutely no craving, no desire to pick at foods, none of that, feeling really, really strong, feeling really good. And then appetizers, I did have out some low sugar fruits. I had some pear and then also some different cheeses. So I did have a little bit of pear and I had some cheese going into the Thanksgiving meal. And remember, the way that Vince Gironda did his diet is he would have his clients do steak and egg for 5 days and then one day have more of a normal conventional diet. Now, I don't think that Vince was working with sugar addicts. I know he was working with bodybuilders, Hollywood stars, Hollywood actresses. So they probably are able to eat a broader amount of things on that 6th day than I am. So I was keeping it pretty much ketogenic. I definitely didn't keep it to 20 grams of carbohydrates on Thanksgiving. I'm sure I had more, but here's how it went. So really, really going well. On Thanksgiving, so I had turkey, a little bit of green beans, pear, some cheese, some sweet potato, my own cranberry sauce. And then the most astonishing thing was we ate at 3:30, and then my whole family later, you know, they had their pie, they had their goodies later. I wanted absolutely nothing else, so I literally didn't eat dessert, even though I had a ketogenic chocolate mousse in my refrigerator ready to eat. No hunger. And I think that that's the astonishing thing about the kind of low carb, ketogenic, even carnivore lifestyle, is that the cravings aren't there. The hunger isn't there. So I did not reach for that mousse. But let's talk about the next day, because the next day things were a little bit different. So I did get up the next day and I found that I did want something more than just my steak and eggs. And I will admit it, I went ahead and I kind of reached for the cheese. So I added some cheese. And then later on in the day, I had little Granny Smith apple and a little bit more pear and a little bit more cheese. And then I also had my ketogenic, my chocolate mousse. And what I did find is, oh, it's back. The hunger was back. So for me, coming off of that ketogenic steak and egg kind of carnivore plan, the next day definitely found myself hunting for food, wanting more food during the day. So the day after that, so we're talking about Friday. So now let's talk about Saturday. Feeling a little bit better, getting up, feeling strong, saying, okay, gotta get right back on it. But I went ahead and had a little bit of cheese. And then I had, again, a little bit of the low sugar fruits. So still dealing with some of that craving, some of that hunger. But then the next day after that, that was Sunday, no cheese, no problem, did really, really well all day long. But then one thing did happen. I found that right around 5:30 in the evening, normally I'm just having 2 meals a day because that's all I want, wanting more food. So this time had a little bit of turkey and a little bit of bacon. Now today, really back on steak and eggs, knowing I'm going to do this update, do this report, and just saying, that's it. Not gonna have any cheese in the morning, not gonna add back any of these things. Getting up, full on, had my little chuck eye steak, had a couple of eggs, 1 slice of bacon, because I am having bacon on this, a little bit of cream in my coffee, and I am feeling fantastic. It's 11:29, it's coming on lunchtime, and I have no hunger whatsoever. Zero hunger, zero cravings, and I know, I'm very confident, I'm going to be able to do my steak and egg protocol coming up. I think I have some errands to run. I think I'm gonna do the errands. I've already done my cooking. It's cooked and ready to eat. Gonna come back and eat that. And believe me, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. If I can stick to it, I'm gonna tell you. If I slip and slide, I'm going to tell you, because if I was watching this channel, I would wanna know, does this thing really work? All right, so hoping for a good day. Before I leave you and before you leave me, I want to talk about neurotransmitters. I said that I was going to talk about dopamine. And I think if there's only one thing that you take away from this channel today, or if you ever watch the Sugar Freedom channel, if you could just simply come to understand the concept of the reward deficiency syndrome. This is a PDF. You can access it. You can read it. I'll go ahead and put the title of the PDF in the show notes. You can get this at Springer Link. If you put in Google, just put in reward deficiency syndrome, you're going to see a link to a free PDF. The PDF is free. There's no weirdness. There's no weirdness to download. You can download this. The authors of this study, Bloom, Cull, Braverman, and Comings, this study came out in 1996. These doctors, these researchers, they're like angels from heaven. They studied the concept that what's happening with people like me who compulsively overeat, and often what's happening also with the gambling, ADHD, that what's happening is that we are not getting the normal rewards that average, oh no, not again. No sound? No sound? If you can't hear what I'm saying, send me another message. Because I've turned off, well, I'm gonna keep going, I'm gonna finish, and then I'm gonna go back and repeat this, because this has happened again. I thought I had my Bluetooth turned off. So anyway, reward deficiency syndrome, dopamine, that what's happening with our sugar cravings and our food cravings is we're not getting the appropriate amount of neurotransmitters, and so that's why we're seeking these other neurotransmitters. As they say here, in a normal person, these neurotransmitters work together in a cascade of excitation or inhibition between complex stimuli and complex responses, leading to a feeling of well-being, the ultimate reward. So I am going to leave you with this PDF, Reward Deficiency Syndrome. I'm going to go back and check and see if we got sound. If we don't, I'll go ahead and redo this. Ah, you can hear me. Okay, good. So we do have sound. So I'm going to keep going and keep talking about reward deficiency syndrome. All right. So here's the picture of the woman with the pills and the alcohol, also sugar. Let me read you this. Okay. Bear with me. It gets a little sciencey here. Although the system of neurotransmitters involved in the biology of reward is complex, at least 3 other neurotransmitters, other than dopamine, are known to be involved at several sites in the brain. Serotonin in the hypothalamus, the enkephalins, or opioid peptides, in the ventral tegmental area, and the nucleus accumbens, sorry guys. And here we go, this is important, the inhibitory neurotransmitter GABA in the ventral tegmental area and the nucleus accumbens. Interestingly, the glucose receptor is an important link between the serotonin system and the opioid peptides in the hypothalamus. An alternative reward pathway involves the release of norepinephrine in the hippocampus from neuronal fibers that originate in the locus coeruleus. All right, why is this important? This is why this is important. Now we know, this was in 1996, but in recent years, studies have been done about what is going on with the ketogenic diet that is helping people lose weight, get results, and feel better. Well, guess what? We have evidence that the ketogenic diet increases levels of GABA. So it may be that it's this GABA pathway that is what's going on with steak and egg, keto, carnivore, that as we get into ketosis, that we get that beta hydroxybutyrate, that what's happening is that we're getting better response, we're getting better levels of GABA. So it's not only that we're handling dopamine better, but also that we're handling GABA better, and also on top of that, serotonin as well. So when we look at dopamine and reward deficiency syndrome as what may be driving what started our overeating in the first place, what started my overeating in the first place, that we can resolve it in two ways. That as we take the excess sugar and excess carbs and excess glucose out, not only may we be responding better to dopamine, but it's possible that we may be healing those dopamine receptors. So we might be getting a win-win. And then on top of that, a win-win-win is that we're increasing GABA. So what I want to leave everyone with is the most important question that I had to ask when I was trying to overcome overweight and obesity and the overeating that caused the overweight and the obesity in the first place. This is the question I had to ask. Why am I overeating? And what can I do instead? And this article, this concept of reward deficiency syndrome, takes me all the way back to the overeating, which started when I was only about 6 or 7 years old. So the reward deficiency syndrome, which is genetic and which comes from, it's a specific allele that has to do with the dopamine receptors. And those of us, Vince Gironda's workouts are crazy. And I'll talk about those later. Especially, boy, it works your back. So with this dopamine deficiency, it's the dopamine receptors that we actually have fewer of them. There was a concept, there was a theory that when they looked at obese people, I don't know if it was after they died and they donated their brains and they looked at their brains and they saw fewer dopamine receptors. So the question has always been, is it the overeating that reduces the receptors, or are these folks born with fewer receptors and that's what causes the overeating? Or is it both? Reward deficiency syndrome, ta-da, would indicate the theory that it is fewer receptors to begin with. So what does that do? That in order to just have that feeling of well-being, which is the ultimate goal, that just for well-being itself, those of us with these impaired dopamine receptors, we have to look for more of a hit or a more constant hit. And one of the things that's interesting is that today, going on Facebook, going on Twitter, getting in Twitter arguments, going shopping, gambling online, that these kinds of behaviors, these scrolling behaviors that we have online that are very much like gambling, it's a lot like a slot machine, that may be what we're after when we go online. It may also be what we're after for people like me when we're constantly seeking sweetness, seeking that sugar and that food and that eating reward. But the good news is, steak and egg, good old Vince Gironda, that this steak and egg protocol for me is keeping me happy, satisfied, and content even after menopause. So that's the wrap up for today, because back when I was overcoming obesity and I was 44, reducing sugar worked. Once I turned 50, going keto worked. And then once I went through menopause, it is this steak and egg protocol, this carnivore protocol that is working. So what I have experienced is that as I have aged, and especially after menopause, I have to raise my game, reduce those carbohydrates, and keep it keto. All right, so I will be coming back next week to talk about what it's like after Thanksgiving, to see what results that we're getting. Until then, I want you to remember always, eat for yourself, be well, and I'll see you back here soon in the Sugar Freedom Kitchen. Take care, everybody.